Hello and welcome to Community Bible Church. Today, Pastor Gary will be sharing a message on the different generations we have in our world and how we are called to listen. Also, don't forget that the sermon notes are available for download in the description below. May God bless you as we transition into a time of worship.
Solid gold, like a vow that is tested, like a covenant of old, and your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. Faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. I will love you, Lord. We praise you. Your kindness makes us whole, and you shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. Now you're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. For you will have your bride, free of all her guilt and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. You will be praised, you will be praised. With angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will
All right, friends, we're about to have a message, but let's think about where that message is going to go. We are a church privileged with the wherewithal to make known the gospel of Jesus Christ, both here, in your home, in your automobile, and various parts of the world. When we give, and we give online, we are bolstering the proclamation of the gospel in numerous countries, our own country, and throughout the Southeast United States and the continental United States. You and I are partnering together to make known the most important message the world can hear, that of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God bless you today in your giving. Amen. Okay, so there's a lot of buzz right now among people. People asking me questions. I'm asking them questions. We're talking about it on the men's Bible study on Tuesday. Your children or your grandchildren or even your great-grandchildren are going off to college, trying to figure out what is this all about? How does this work? The influence of the world. How do we help our young people preserve their faith in the midst of adversity and challenges? There's all kind of that thing going on right now, and I wanted to address it. We have been planning for some time now to have, starting this Wednesday even, an open dialogue about grandparents influencing their grandchildren. There's a lot of the gospel skipping a generation now. Some of the young people you saw up here on the platform were raised actually not by their parents, but would have been their grandparents. So there's this is a big deal. If you're not aware of it, you should be. And I want to encourage both parents and grandparents alike to come on Wednesday. I do not think you'll be disappointed. I think we have a really good evening plan that could lead to other evenings. I'm gauging your interest at this point. So I want to share with you some things. The ABCs of Generation XYZ. So every generation seems to have a name. We're going to define those parameters for each generation on Wednesday. But this is a big deal because I know many of you are trying to minister to the younger generation, and you maybe could use some help. Okay, let's put it that way. I just blessed and dedicated a facility, Glen Cove, a 12-hole par 3 golf course with facilities of fishing ponds and a rec barn with 2 bowling alleys in it. I mean, this is a really nice place here on the plateau, a private club, but nonetheless, its purpose is for one thing and one thing only: for families, particularly grandparents and grandchildren, to enjoy one another, to connect with one another, to make memories together, and to have fun. This is a facility that realizes the need to bridge the generations. Okay? As I said last week, Andy Stanley's got a new book out. It's about this idea that the evangelical church in America is in trouble. Well, yeah, maybe on some level. Let's not totally dismiss that. Let's not over-exaggerate it either, but let's not dismiss it. Yes, we've got some work to do. Let's put it this way. And my job, in part, and as a grandparent, is to help you and to help myself figure out how to best navigate these waters. Okay? Highly important topic. How do we connect with? How do we share with? How do you leave a spiritual legacy? What are you leaving behind as your family grows on? Very important question. You know, you might have a will, you have a trust, you have this, you have that, but do you have a strategic spiritual legacy in place for your grandchildren? Even great-grandchildren you haven't even met yet. See, the nuclear family is as spread out as it's ever been. Geographically, emotionally, spiritually. The only group of people that I see in our culture that have been good at this one thing is the African American community. They seem to know how to have a family reunion. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Keeping the family intact, keeping the family together, and dealing with eternal issues together. And having the credibility to speak into a son, daughter, niece, nephew, granddaughter, grandson, is an important thing. So we're going to identify on Wednesday the current generations, have an open discussion, and talk about these key areas of life in which we can dialogue with the younger generation about. We're going to approach better communication. We're going to be smarter about what we do, and how to be relevant is going to be a big part of what we talk about. It's not just knowing what to deal with. It's knowing how to deal with it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out the problem. You do have to have a little savvy to know how to go about finding a solution. Therein lies the problem. Therein lies the challenge. Psalm 145, verse 4, one verse today. One generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. There it is. All right, generation. All right, is it just different ages? I guess if you want to get technical about it, a generation is defined by age, but it's more than that. It's far more than that. It's each age, each grouping of ages in our culture, sociologists will tell you this, come up in a different culture. Some of you were born in and grew up in a totally different culture and society, mindset, social mores, expectations than any other. It's not just when you were born, it's what did you experience in the context of the culture in which you came up. Okay? That's a generation. Different ages and a different age in which you lived. I was recently contracted, so to speak, to counsel with a young man in a military school somewhere on the East Coast. I had 10 Zoom calls with this young man. And he was having difficulty at the school carrying out his responsibilities. He had relational conflicts. He had misunderstandings. He had poor communication. And we started to pick this thing apart over about 20 plus hours of counseling, and we came to the conclusion that, my goodness, you were born in a different culture, raised by a different ethnicity, have different expectations. You were planted in a military culture, and on top of all of that, the people that work at the school are from Virginia, and they have their own culture. He's got the triple whammy. We finally, after 10 sessions, figured this thing out, and he's well on his way. But that's the world we live in. How do we communicate with one another? I get frustrated sometimes because our staff is fairly young, our instrumentalists are young, or whatever. I mean, everyone's young around me, and they keep coming to the church. I love it. They love the church, I love them. But my frustration is, certain things ought to be mandatory. If I ask a young guy in media if he's seen Top Gun, the answer better be yes. That was like 40 years ago. Crimson Tide? No idea what you're talking about. He thinks it's a towel over at Target for sale. I mean, there's certain movies. What do you mean you don't know any? How can you not know anything about this world? There's certain things you got to know. They don't know. So I threatened to fire him, and then Thomas gets on me about that. It's just not. One generation commends. Praises, lauds, even brings this soothing sense of assurance that one generation, you in particular, my friend, are called to commend things to the other generation, to commend, to laud, to give credit to the Lord for what he's done, for his works, his deeds, his transactions, his personal transactions with you. There's even this word works. They use it in Hebrew to define the word. It has to do with needleworking. The Old Testament's big on embroidery, cross-stitch, and needleworking. The Lord says in Psalm 139, I have embroidered you in your mother's womb. That is to say, you, the way you look right now, God embroidered. I don't know what he was thinking, but he did. He embroidered you. And here you are, specific unlike anyone else, embroidered you. Well, he also needleworks, so he does very specific things in people's lives, and those are the personal, very specific embroidering type things that we need to share with the next generation. That's what he's trying to say. I want you to commend these things to them, and then not only that, I want you to share my mighty acts. So there's personal issues that we share, and then there's other things that we share with the generation. Mighty acts. Well, how could we speak to these mighty acts? What things have you seen in your life that are God things, that God brought about? And what does your generation have to say about these mighty acts? Hello, World War II. I'm sitting down at lunch with a couple guys the other day, and one of them's in the room. He's 24, and he's sitting at the table with a guy, I don't even know how old he is. He's sitting over here. He's in his 90s, and I'm thinking, let's start talking about the plane that you flew in, the fighter plane. Let's start talking about what you did with that 20-30 caliber gun. Let's start talking about World War II so a 24-year-old can hear the mighty acts of God. How did we make it through the Depression? How did we make it through disco? That's a mighty act of God. Do you know that God got us past disco? What if he had left us in disco? Tom, you laugh, but you would not look like you look today. He got us through bell bottoms. What if he had left us there? And platform shoes. We have to commend the personal and the mighty acts of God. The personal tribulations in which he has brought us. The health issues he's brought us through. These are the things God wants us to share with the younger generation. So what are these ABCs, so to speak, of generation XYZ? A, answer correctly. Now, let me speak correctly about answering correctly. The correct answer is the one that doesn't compromise the relationship. There might be a right answer to the question that you're asked or a right way to talk about something, but the correct answer is contextual to the relationship with your grandson you're having a conversation with. It's not overbearing, but you were right. It's not about who's right. It's about how do you communicate with one another in such a way that you don't violate trust or alienate one another from one another. Okay? We have to answer correctly. That's just not the answer. It's the way that we give it or even what we withhold because we're not ready for yet. Answer correctly. I think the best way to do this in a relationship with the other generation is to follow the way of wisdom. Don't go beat your grandchild over the head with the gospel that they never heard before and tell them they should be in church every day the doors open. Follow the way of wisdom. What is that? Follow the way that earns credibility, that bolsters relevance. Wisdom is always relevant in any generation at any time. Wisdom is timeless. If we want to have a platform to influence not only our family, but the world, follow the way of wisdom. Share wisdom with other people. Proverbs is one of the friendliest topics you could bring up. Everyone wants to hear about wisdom. Proverbs are actually used in other religions and secular proverbs. There's proverbs everywhere. The biblical proverbs are common, friendly ground to discuss life. People want to know how to live. Show them how to live. Show them the way of wisdom. Some of you are very, very schooled in the proverbs. You read them daily. You pray them daily. You live them out daily. You're way ahead of the rest of us. Share the way of wisdom. If you're an older person, and by that I mean relatively older than a younger person, share the way of wisdom. That's the way you get credibility. Timelessness is good when we're bound by differences defined by time. If I can share something with you that's timeless, which I do every Sunday, I know it's relevant. It doesn't matter how old you are, what your background is, it's always relevant to share something timeless. It's when we get into time and we're bound by time is where we lack a fullness of a counsel of the Word of God. We only see through our current modern day eyes. We only see through our current culture. Wisdom transcends all of that. Don't share the gospel until you've earned the credibility to do so, and you probably won't do that until you start taking the way of wisdom. Answer correctly. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpent and harmless as doves. You get into a conversation on an airplane. You start talking to somebody about politics, God forbid. Whatever the case may be, wisdom, 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 wisdom. That's all you're about, wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. Read the Proverbs and share the wisdom. It's applicable to everybody, welcomed by everybody, and it changes everybody's way of perceiving things. The word changes, not your opinion, not your passion, not your lack thereof, not your knowledge, wisdom. Boom, there it is, wisdom. Is wisdom simply something that is attained through age? No, it's not. We associate wisdom with gray hair, or the absence thereof. People ask me all the time, what's the demographic of your congregation? What they're saying is, how old are these people? And I won't tell them. Let's just put it this way, a lot of the men are parting their hair in the middle right now. That's what I'll say. Think about that. It'll hit you when you get to the car. Use discretion, speak wisdom, and let the word do the work. Let the word do the work. Paul was on Mars Hill. He knew how to use logic. He knew how to use reason. He knew how to understand where they were coming from. He knew how to answer things correctly. He knew when to share truth and when to share it in a manner that would be received. He knew that. Study the Proverbs. Adaptability versus rigidity. When you answer correctly, you're adaptive, not rigid. Rigidity will get you nowhere in this world today. Nowhere. You'll lose credibility instantly with rigidity. Don't even come across as rigid. You may be rigid, but don't be rigid in front of other people. You might have an ideology that's rigid, but don't share that with other people. They don't like it, they discount it, you have no credibility, and you're hurting the rest of us. Rigidity won't get it. Forget it. We're in a post-Christian world. Let's wake up. No rigidity. Don't compromise, but don't be rigid either. Okay? So we have to adapt to situations. So you sit down and talk to your grandson or your granddaughter, that's a situation. Understand what it is. You have a past with them, you've taught them things, they've learned things, sometimes they haven't learned anything. They know something, they don't know something. Whatever the case may be, adapt and share wisdom. People who are wise also understand this. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. A wise man, a wise woman is open to instruction. If we cannot ask a younger generation to teach us something about something they're passionate about so that we may learn, we are really saying we know it all. And we don't. We don't. Half of the things that people would die on a hill over in this world, you really don't know, definitely. Frankly, you really don't know. You think you do, you come across as you do, you really don't. On every side of every issue, not everything is that clear. God knows it all, I don't. If you're gonna have a strong opinion about climate change, great. Learn something from your grandson about it before you go tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about. We can't be rigid about these things. What we need to be is about the gospel, not creating things that get between us and the gospel. Peripheral issues. Remember that Indian in the 70s that cried when they threw a beer can on the floor? There's nothing new. There's nothing new. We're not good stewards of the earth. Haven't been for a long time. Everybody knows that. But seek to understand where people are coming from, because it's about the person. It's about the relationship. It's not about the issue. It's about people. Answer correctly. B, be beneficially minded. What does that mean? What I see happening more in my own life, and I think not so much in my life, but I think I'm ready for it if it does, in other people's life, is a grandparent comes across as needy instead of needed. You know who's the fault for some of that? The grandparent. Sometimes we sell ourselves as total buffoons. And we are when it comes to technology. But you don't have to oversell it. You go into your 4-year-old grandson and say, I'm just as Paul would say, I'm an idiot. I don't even know how to turn this on. I'm old. I'm irrelevant. You know, people actually believe you when you say that stuff. At least fake it till you make it. I know you don't know squat about the internet, but don't go telling everybody because you look stupid. And then when some real issue comes up, no one's going to pay attention to you. They don't even know how to turn on a cell phone. We're compromising our own credibility. Like, be wise, right? Walk around, acting like you know what you're talking about. Wear a pocket protector if you have to. No, don't do that. Don't do that. It was a bad idea. I know you need help in certain areas, but don't sell yourself to be just a goofball. These people are counting on you to impart something in their life. Don't come across as someone who's totally irrelevant, born in the greatest invention when you were born was the sundial, the wheel. Nobody wants to hear that. Hope I didn't offend anybody. Oh, it wasn't the wheel, it was combustible engine, assembly line, radio. I'm getting closer. Not the cotton gin, but the phone. Some of you came up, phone, right? Television, there you go, changed the world. Radio after that, or radio before, I don't know, what's the difference? I'm too old to remember. Be beneficially minded. What am I going to do? What am I going to say that's going to benefit the relationship and not cost me something down the road? Wisdom. Don't come across as needy. Come across as needed. Because you are. You are necessary. In God's economy, the grandparent, the parent is necessary. We're necessary. We're needed. Let's act like it. Do what we tell others to do. All right, honey, you're going off to school. God bless you. We went over the budget, and this is where your dorm is, and your mom's crying on the sidewalk in front of the dorm, and you're kissing each other. You get in the car. You're depressed for over a week and a half. Dad's high-fiving everybody. And here's what you say. Study hard. What if we took the same advice and we studied equally as hard about what matters to them and how to connect to them and stay connected to them? What if we read what they read? What if we understood what they understood? What if we got inside their head and got their perspective? What if we were relevant? What if we were needed? What if we actually brought things up that they just read that day? Or there's all kind of possibilities. So we tell people to study hard, we don't do it ourselves. Let's invest in the relationship. Let's show ourselves as a workman approved. Let's know a topic, if it's a passionate topic of your grandchild or your son or daughter. Let's know that topic. Let's show ourselves that we're interested, that we put in the work. We may not agree with it, but we understand it. Because when you fail to understand something, you basically are irrelevant. So if you've got these triggers in a younger generation, know what they are so we can do what we're asking them to do. Also realize this, truth is truth. And the truth isn't only in the Bible. There are other things outside the Bible that are true. Right? Know what you're talking about. So I see that here's the one that comes up all the time. We'll talk about this on Wednesday. The world is falling apart. It's going to hell in a handbasket because of social media. I would say that that's probably in part true, but not totally true. When you've just discounted something that means something to that generation, because it may be, for some students, some kids, the only way they're connecting with their peers, having not been in school for 2 years, and we just lambast it like it's nothing, we just cut off a source of their own identity. We've got to go the way of wisdom and think. Generalized comments aren't going to get us there. Sweeping generalizations won't get us there. There's probably some really good things. In fact, I'm not on Facebook, if you haven't noticed. Someone here in the church sent me something about, 6 o'clock this morning I saw it. And she said something to me, and I love her post because they're pretty much thought-provocative. They provoke thought and insight, and they never hurt anybody. They never divide. They're usually fun or uplifting. They're about family and her experiences. So when I see her post come in, I run to it. That's a good thing. Not everything is wrong with everything in the new generation. They are a product of, in many respects, the technology that came about during their time on earth. That's how they communicate with one another. That's how they understand one another. Now, you really want to see this freak out in the days and months and years ahead? It's going to be artificial intelligence. Then after that, probably the mark of the beast. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, we can't just grandly say, yes, this is good and this is bad, and cut half the population out, and we're not even relevant. We got to think. Wise like a serpent, gentle like a dove. Paul put it this way, 1 Corinthians 9, 19 to 23. Though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone. Say what? To win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. The first question we should be asking is, where is this person, and how do I get to where they are as fast as possible? To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. The church is under massive scrutiny. The credibility of, I just dealt with this morning. Had a counseling appointment this morning. Just dealt with this morning. The trauma from irresponsible clergy. It's almost unrecoverable. The proliferation of poor teaching, false teaching, and then inappropriate behavior. It's hard to come back from. It is hard. People that have been involved in toxic religion, cults, hard people to really minister to. Lack of trust, suspect of a lot of things, and rightly so, very difficult. It's very difficult to get people, even I'm dealing with this right now in this church. Someone's coming to church, it's the last thing they want to do, but whatever credibility I've managed over time to amass, I'm using every inch and solid molecule of it to get them to sit in a pew. The effort and the wisdom that is needed to create an opportunity like that is unconscionable. It is something you never had to do before in the past. The manner in which you can lose someone in a nanosecond is unbelievable. I mentioned healing, and God was going to heal people in this church, which he has, and 2 people left the church. Immediately, never saw him again. They were some of the most involved people in the whole congregation. Gone, vanished, gone, not a word, situation over because of healing. I stood in this pulpit years ago and I said, let's all get out to vote. We have a right to vote. It's a privilege to vote. Everyone get out and vote. And the man in the pew left the church. He was done. Because what they heard was, go out and vote against any marriage but that between a man and a woman. It is so delicate a situation. I tried for 6 months to earn that opportunity and led that man to the Lord on a Good Friday years ago. Gone. We have to be slow to speak and quick to listen. Coming out of the last 2 years in our culture where everyone had something to say and no one paid attention to one another at all. Now we got a mess to clean up. Slow to speak. The younger generation wants to be heard. You love them. Listen. Listen more than you speak. And when you speak, speak wisdom. C. Chronicle wisdom for everyday living. What is this? There are certain key areas of life. I'm going to tell you about this way. My pastor in Atlanta was my pastor for 13 years. I went from a volunteer to the assistant pastor, a church of about, I don't know how many thousands of people. He was there with me the whole entire time. David C. Cooper, Dr. Cooper, and he shared with us what he called Cooperisms. Cooperisms. I was so tired of hearing about it. But they were nuggets, man. Nuggets. When someone shares a truth with you, and you hear it, and you retain it, and then you practice it, then it becomes a core value, then you share it with other people, that's it. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that seed to be planted in your next generation that is understood, it's planted, it's retained, it's growing, it bears fruit, and that fruit shared with other people. That's what you're looking for. One he always used to say to me, start small. Go deep. Think big. You've heard me say that. I got that from him. Part of his spiritual legacy was that one truth. Here's another one. Because I was a big thinker, I was a visionary, I was brash, I was passionate, I was young, I was inexperienced. Be faithful in few things. God will give you charge over many. That's 2. He had many others. My college basketball coach, Coach Hugh Durham, when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you're rotten. He said that to superstar athletes who had the potential of getting big egos. When you're green, you're growing. You're ripe, you're rotten. See, what is your go-to for marriage, okay? You as a parent, a grandparent, a great-parent, what is your go-to? What's your Cooperism, so to speak, for marriage? Chronicle it. Put it on a piece of paper. That's what I'm saying. Chronicle it. What about money? What about family? What about parenting? What is it? What have you gleaned from other people? Who's invested in you? What nuggets of wisdom do you have that you can chronicle, put on a piece of paper, and give to a high school graduate? I guarantee you, a lot of things will be lost in that freshman dorm between freshman and sophomore year, but not that piece of paper. That's a keeper. Go the way of wisdom. How do you handle money? How do you handle debt? Keep it simple. Keep it portable. Keep it relevant. And remind them every now and again. I've buried a few people in this community, stood right here and did many a funeral over the years. There was a kid years ago, stood right here in this spot. His father had just died, one of the first funerals I did here. American flag draped over the coffin. Navy seaman is what his rank was when he left the Navy. And his grandson stood right here at attention with his own uniform on, sang the national anthem. No, sang the Navy theme song. Wasn't a dry eye in the place. Spiritual legacy. Had nothing to do with agreeing or disagreeing about politics, climate. It was, you couldn't extricate that from that kid's heart. That was his papa, and that's what his papa was about. And he loved his papa, therefore that's what he was about. He went the way of wisdom. Some things we feel needy about. We can't get people to take them from us and chew on it and digest it and agree with it. And other things you couldn't pull out of somebody with a scalpel. It's so ingrained in who they are, it's not even up for negotiation. I got that from my papa. There's a guy that died before he ever got here, Sam Hendricks. I talked about him the other day. Talk to anybody about Sam Hendricks, and here's what you'll hear. That guy was all about love. You have a conversation with him, it was about love. He'd let you know how much he loved you, coming and going. You knew how much Sam loved you. He was about love. Love was the focal point of his life. Spiritual legacy. Nobody's asking him right now what he thought about the latest presidential debate. They got love from Sam. Give me a chance on Wednesday. Take this a little step further. Let's have an open dialogue about how we're going to minister to these young people. Meet them where they are. Be who they need us to be. Impart spiritual wisdom and legacy to them. What do you got to lose? Since God created the DVR, there's nothing you can miss on television. If there's something you have to do while you're here, bring your cell phone. Do it while I'm talking, but come. Let's figure out something we need to figure out, because we just may be in trouble with more than one generation. What we tolerate, we deserve. We get what we tolerate. What are you passionate about, and what are they passionate about? Not everything you're passionate about needs to be shared, because they're not ready to hear it, or it's not going to benefit the relationship. And without relationship, what do we have? Nothing. 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 Let's pray. Let one generation commend your works, your mighty acts to another. Let there be wisdom on our lips. Give us a fear of the Lord of reverence for you, Father, that makes what we say penetrating, altering, transformative, meaningful, needed, relevant, timely to whatever generation we speak. For your word is living and active and sharper than a double-edged sword, penetrates to dividing soul and spirit, even joint and marrow, and it judges the attitude of the heart. Help us, Lord, to commend your works to the next generation and generations. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, there's so many ways we can follow up and make this message something that we put into practice. So let's talk about just one, shall we? My challenge to you is this. Think about 10 areas of life. I'll give you some easy ones. Marriage, money. It's always finance and romance are always appropriate. Relationships, communication, marketplace, calling, vocation. Add to that whatever you want. And I want you to put those down on a piece of paper. Then I want you to think about, if I was going to leave behind a nugget of wisdom on each of these areas, or if I have received a nugget of wisdom in each of these areas that I think I need to further internalize or share with someone else, I want you to write them down. I want you to keep a running list of wise nuggets of truth in important areas of life. And I want you to get into the practice of sharing those with other people that makes your relationship, your friendship relevant. I also want you to perfect that list as you go through time and consider leaving it as a spiritual legacy to your family that continually earns you the respect of being a go-to person who understands every aspect of life. Though you're not an expert in all, you have a wisdom to be applied in each area that will always eternally bring someone to a better result as a result of you commending to them the wisdom and the works of God. Think about that. Keep a running list. Let's work on it and share it with the world today.
Thank you so much for joining online here at Community Bible Church. We hope that you've enjoyed the message and are encouraged for your week ahead. And don't forget to download the CBC app and follow us on social media. We will see you here next week at CBC Highlands.